Are we about to see a return of Ollie Ball to Old Trafford as the fallout from Amorim's sacking is revealed? I'm going to run through all the latest news, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Welcome to Man United Review. Let's jump straight into it. So firstly, it's actually a big game tomorrow night. I'm massively excited to see how Darren Fletcher conducts himself tonight in his first press conference. I think it's going to be around 5:30 p.m. UK time. So that's going to be really interesting to see. I'm actually excited for the game tomorrow to see how we line up, how we play, and so on and so forth. But he's going to need, all the help we can get. So let's run through all the injury latest because we might have a few players back. Obviously, we'll know a little bit more later. But Solly is saying that Bruno has returned to grass training and is pushing to play against Burnley on Wednesday. Sources have said Bruno has been practically begging coaches to let him play. A decision is set to be made by Darren Fletcher tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and see what Darren Fletcher says tonight in his press conference to see whether Bruno's back. But that'll be a big boost for him and a help to, hopefully start his tenure as interim head coach on a high and with a win, because my God, we still need to get points and we still need to win football games through all of this turmoil that's going on with the whole manager situation as well. Sully also said that Kobbie Mainoo's back on grass as well, but they're worried about, they're going to be careful with his rehab due to risk of aggravating his calf as well. I'm pretty sure that before the whole, I'm the manager thing in his press conference, I'm pretty sure they did see or hear somewhere Ruben Amorim saying Mount might be available to get some minutes as well. So that'll be a big boost for Darren Fletcher. We can have Mount, Mainoo and Bruno potentially available. We don't know De Ligt's situation or Maguire's situation as well. So hopefully we can get a bit of positivity for Darren Fletcher for his first game, because we need players, and the better players we have available, the more chance we have of beating Burnley on Wednesday. But that's going to be really interesting to see how it lines up, and like I said, I'm actually really excited for the game tomorrow to see how it all plays out, and hopefully we can get the 3 points on the board. Be a good start for Darren Fletcher and his reign as the interim head coach of United. Now there's also been another former player that's returned to the club, and none other than Johnny Evans. So Johnny Evans is set to rejoin Manchester United's first team coaching staff and could be involved in preparations for the Burnley match. He's expected to remain in the role until the end of the season. So, obviously with Amorim going, all his coaches have gone as well, because that was part of him coming in, is that he wanted to bring all of his staff in, coaching that with him. So we do need coaches. So giving Johnny Evans the role until the end of the season's not a bad shout, in my opinion. Obviously, he's just retired and knows the club, and, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. Fabrizio Romano said, Sky is saying that Johnny Evans has returned to Manchester United in a short-term role to assist Darren Fletcher while he takes charge of the first team. Both Fletcher and Evans are at Carrington now, where they are taking the United squad for the first full training session since Amorim's departure. So Johnny Evans is back, helping out Darren Fletcher. If he's going to be a coach till the end of the season, then maybe helping out the interim manager, and we'll go through all the interim manager news and stuff in a second as well. So Johnny Evans back to help Darren Fletcher. And I don't have an issue with that, because we need coaches at the end of the day, because Amorim's gone, and so is the entire coaching staff with him as well. See you later, pack your bags, off you go. So yeah, we do need help. And apparently there's coming out at the time recording this video as well, that there's a list of other former players and pros that do want to get involved to try and help the club as well, which is always nice to see at a time of need, where you get getting the band back together, get the boys back together, with people wanting to come in and offer their help as well. So yeah, that's the latest regarding obviously Evans and Darren Fletcher. The big question is going to be though, what happens with going back to Kobbie Mainoo. Incomings and outgoings for the January transfer window, where David Ornstein has said that Manchester United do not want to weaken their squad, and that looks set to rule out loan exits, with any permanent departures relying on suitable offers landing and having enough to secure replacements, having long enough to secure replacements. There's always been a desire to retain Kobbie Mainoo, and his wish to leave will likely soften following the head coach news, while Joshua Zirkzee remains a valued player and character as United seek Champions League qualification. So David Ornstein effectively saying that, look, because obviously the coach situation we're unlikely to want to sanction any exits in January to make ourselves weaker. He has also said, though, don't expect any incoming. So a lot can change in the weeks ahead. But the initial word I'm getting is no notable business is expected to be done at this point in time. So David Ornstein effectively saying that, and that stands to reason. We don't have a manager or a head coach, and we don't have anybody interim. We might be getting another interim to replace the interim, and so on and so forth. That is a bit of a blow because, regardless of what we think about the manager situation and tactics and formations and all the stuff that we've been talking about over the last few days and weeks and months, we still need better players, and that's a big blow for me to not be going into this window with any sort of strategy or any players lined up is a bit of a blow. But things could change. We'll keep an eye on it. No doubt we'll get links with players, and we'll know a few more a bit once we know maybe what's going on with the whole manager situation as well, because they might look at it and say, well, actually, if we do want to flip to a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, maybe we do need a forward now, and it might just, and there might be an opportunity to do something like that towards the end of January. But we'll wait and see. Give us your thoughts and feelings on all of that in the comments below. Now, there's been quite a few. I will say firstly, before we go through these stories, right? I think this has been briefed from United's perspective, because I've got update from Chris Wheeler I'm going to run through next. Laurie Whitwell's done a good piece in The Athletic, but Rob Dawson, Samuel Lucas, people like that, the Man United journalists, right, have all been saying that very similar things as well. So this does feel like it's a club-led brief, which goes through a little bit around the final days and, it'll maybe explain a few things regarding the whole Amorim shenanigans, why he was sacked, and what led to this sort of situation that blew up in the last few days as well. But what I will say, it's very one-sided. There's always two sides to every story, but this is mainly coming from United's perspective at this particular moment in time. And then if anything comes out, I'll obviously bring you any updates if once Amorim's side of the story comes out as well. But I'm going to start off with Chris Wheeler's piece as well, saying that Amorim's mumbling speech that told Man United stars he'd lost control. So this is saying that, so when the Manchester United players gathered at Old Trafford for last week's game against Wolves, they weren't ready for what Ruben Amorim was about to do next. Having finally showed a willingness to adapt his trusted back three system and embrace the expansive football the United hierarchy wanted in the 4-4 draw with Bournemouth and the Boxing Day win over Newcastle, Amorim had prepared for Wolves in a similar way. The squad had trained in the last 2 sessions at Carrington with a back 4 and were expecting to line up in that formation and attack a team adrift at the foot of the Premier League with just 2 points from their first 18 games and 11 defeats in a row. However, there was a palpable sense of surprise and confusion amongst the players when he called the squad together beforehand and told them that there was a change of plan. United were reverting to a back 3. He was mumbling as he tried to explain to them, a dressing room source tells the Daily Mail. The players got the impression he didn't have everything under control. He seemed full of self-doubt and quite insecure. So firstly, Chris Wheeler is saying that, because the whole reason why he's been sacked, in my opinion, is to do with the formation and his lack of willingness to come away from the 3-4-3, which has caused such an issue since he took over, really, hasn't it? We've never stopped talking about it. It's never been out of the media and so on and so forth, right? But effectively saying that the key takeaway from that part was, that they trained ahead of the Wolves game in a back 4 until the last minute when he decided to change it. And one of the criticisms I had about Amorim for doing that was, in his own words, he said that he changed it because Wolves were playing with a back 5. And so effectively he was saying, well, I needed to play a back 5 because Wolves play with a back 5. It's Wolves. We're at home at Old Trafford. And that was a big bugbear that I personally had as well about Ruben Amorim. But the players were equally as surprised as well and confused by it all. But after having gone from a 4 and then reverting back to a back 3 to play Wolves, you can maybe understand why. It goes on to say in the report, though, in the end, Amorim went down with his precious back 3 system. United had tried to coax him out of it with limited success, but in recent weeks he had taken the feedback from those above him in an increasingly emotional way. The Wolves game was a prime example of a man reverting to type as Amorim reverted back into his shell. Being resistant to change was one thing, but calling out his bosses was something else again. So yeah, you can't go in a press conference and call out your bosses. That's never going to go down well. Goes on to say, though, in the report, Amorim was meant to be the antidote to the chaos under Erik ten Hag, and in many ways he was. The trouble is when the time came to be a little bit more expansive, he was unable and unwilling to do it. United bought into the process at the beginning United bought into the process at the beginning that he would implement the 3-4-2-1 system that works so well at Sporting, and over time make the United players more flexible. But it was on the understanding that the team would evolve over time. It was clear from the conversation he had with his players before the Wolves game that wasn't happening. And that's a key point that I want to take away from that as well, because I said at the end of yesterday's video, right, because I know Ineos are getting it in the neck, and rightly so. I'm not defending Ineos when I say this, right, for hiring Amorim in the first place, knowing that he's a 3-4-3 manager. Why did you hire him? I've heard those questions going around, right? But I said that we don't know what was said in the initial interview. If in the initial interview Amorim was saying, I will never, ever, ever come away from 3-4-3. It's going to be 3-4-3 forever, and you have to recruit me players for only 3-4-3, and that's it. And Ineos hired him anyway, then they're stupid, in my opinion, for doing that and going down that route and then not backing him and so on and so forth. But if the conversation was, I will initially play a 3-4-3, but over time, until such point where the players learn it and they understand what I want from their roles and how to press and so on and so forth, right? But eventually after that, I will be open to change if it's not working, to play a 4 or a 3 or whatever, right? And then we hired him based on that assumption. Then it's on Amorim for not changing it. And going off of what Chris Wheeler said there, and from which is a brief from the club, so we'll probably hear Amorim's point of view at some point in time down the line. So just to remain balanced, this is a one-sided fight at the moment coming from the club. But the club were saying that there was always going to be an evolution from the system, and because he'd reverted back to it, that's then caused the whole sort of drama, in my opinion. So in that case, it's on Amorim, in my opinion, but you can disagree with that, as I'm sure some of you are going to in the comments below. But it goes on to say in the report, insiders spoke on Monday about the club not seeing enough evolution or progress. They've pushed back on the notion that Amorim was engaged in some kind of power struggle with Wilcox, or not being given always being given ultimatums from above. On the contrary, they insisted it was given unwavering support and had the tools he needed to succeed. So going off of what Chris Wheeler was saying there, effectively, he was hired under the assumption that yes, he would play the 3-4-3, but he would not be rigid in that formation, that over time that it would change, and especially if it's not working, which it isn't, in my opinion. Yes, we're better than what we were last season, but it's not a surprise. We finished 15th last season and were absolutely terrible. And it's not exactly it's not exactly been brilliant, has it? When we've drawn and lost more games than you've won this season, then, it would suggest to me that it's not working personally. That's just my personal opinions. Again, some of you are going to disagree with that in the comments below, I'm sure, on that. But, that's the club's standpoint was, yes, we'll happy to stick through the pain and go through all of that, but eventually we will change over time. And Amorim did, and then he's reverted back to it. And then the club have said, well, hold on, why have you decided to do that? Can we not go back to it? And he's lost his rag with it, and it's all blown up from there. And on the flip side, though, from Amorim's perspective, he is probably seeing it as, well, you're doing my job for me, which is where the whole manager talk in his post-match press conference came out, where he was like, I'm the manager of Man United, you can't tell me what formation to play, and so on and so forth. And that's what's, they've decided, well, actually, if you're not willing to change, we don't want you, mate, and off you go. And that's how it feels to me anyway. Laurie Whitwell's piece is a little bit more detailed as well, and again, this is coming from the club, though, so you do need to bear that in mind. But said a very similar thing. Now, although the seeds of Amorim's demise at Manchester United were sown in various stages, the ground finally fell from beneath him during a tempestuous encounter with Wilcox on Friday. Amorim, people at United would argue, was the catalyst, erupting when discussions turned into tactics and transfers. Amorim had sensed a creep into his territory during recent weeks, and the results have been described by sources close to the club as a massive fallout between the pair. So again, Amorim probably did feel that people were stepping on his toes, and he's right to potentially feel that way. But again, all of that boils down to what was pre-agreed in his initial interview with the club. If he told the club, I will change, and then we've tried to change him and he's gone against it, then he's only got himself to blame for that. But if he was adamant in that first initial job interview that he would only play the 3-4-3, and we've tried to change him, then we're at fault for it. But the reports are at the moment that it's the first one where Amorim was open to change. And as much as he did say the Pope can't get him to change, he has said countless times there will be evolution. We will not play this way forever. So and I believe at the moment that there was an understanding that he would eventually change. Going back to the report, though, it says, in their face-to-face meeting at Carrington, Wilcox suggested to Amorim that the players were struggling to gain trust in his 3-4-2-1 system and had become confused over his vision. Amorim would train the team in a back four, only for a back three to be selected in games. They also sensed he lacked faith in them due to his selections and public statements. And, you know, I do think the calling out of certain players in the press was again another reason. We mentioned that in yesterday's video, though, didn't we? But then Laurie Whittle also goes on to say, Amorim responded that the players needed to be changed. Wilcox said he wanted to work through the issues, evolving the squad over time, but sticking with Amorim. Amorim reacted by saying he wished to leave the club and would be calling his agent. So while he said, I'm not going to quit or anything like that, if he said that to Jason Wilcox in a bit of a blow up on Friday, then they've got no choice, have they, to get rid of him, in my opinion as well. And it goes on to say, the irony is that Wilcox, who regularly watches training, was seen as one of Amorim's biggest allies. They would talk daily and conversations took place over formations. Wilcox is known to like 4-3-3 that brought Man City success, although up until recently, that did not translate into direct advice on Amorim. So, you know, according to Laurie Whitwell, and again, Rob Dawson's done a similar thing. Samuel Lucker's done a similar thing as well, where it's coming from the club side anyway, that look, the assumption was that Amorim was meant to adapt and meant to change, which got to that sort of position where it's like, well, you have to do something. We had to do something because the results and performances weren't exactly going so well that he warranted sticking with the 3-4-3. It wasn't working, and there needs to come a time when you change. And I think the club have tried to coach him to change and say, look, you know, to help him out, and he's not for it. And he's like, nope, I'm reverting back to type. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm the manager. And then it's all blown up from there as well. That's my interpretation, reading between the lines as well. You'll have a different viewpoint, I'm sure, and I'm sure you're going to share it in the comments below as well. But that's how it feels going off of those briefs as well. And again, we'll wait for more information because we might have some stories, and you know, I'm sure more is going to come out in the wash as well. But either way, we need to get this next decision right, because while, you know, I'm not going to sit here and defend Ineos neither on the flip side, because, you know, the whole Ten Hag situation was a mess. The Dan Ashworth situation, a mess. The whole Ten Hag situation, a mess, albeit though I'm a little bit less critical of them for doing that if there was an assumption that he would change formation. You know, but we obviously don't know the truth. We're just going off of what's going on in the media there as well. But this actually made me laugh from Laurie Whitwell's piece as well, which was quite worrying. But Amorim continued to feel a reduction in his authority that might be attributed in part to the Glazers, who have been expressing their dissatisfaction over results as early as August. They are still expected to let Ratcliffe run the club, but can, in theory, step in at any time as majority shareholders. They do have questions about the setup and relevant experience of those in charge. So when you're running the club and you're being criticised by the Glazers of how you're running the club, then you know you've effed up, in my opinion. That's how it felt to me reading that part, that even the Glazers were expressing their dissatisfaction over the results in August, yet obviously we persisted and given Amorim back in and time and so on and so forth. But also they're questioning the current setup as well. So if you're running a club and the Glazers are looking at it and say, hold on, we could do a better job than that, then maybe that says that you need to get this next appointment right. We need to get this next managerial appointment right. So let's run through all the latest regarding that. But I did find that bit in the piece, you know, quite funny in an alarming way. But yeah, where are we at now? So it's looking like the narrative at the moment is an interim. Darren Fletcher for a couple of weeks or a couple of games, and then potentially a caretaker manager until the summer, where we can go for a top target or have more time between now to then to obviously recruit and interview and do all of that stuff. Because Ineos need to get this appointment right. If they get this one wrong, then, you know, not that there's not questions around them anyway, but I would start having massive concerns if they get this particular manager appointment wrong. So let's run through the latest regarding the interim situation. So Michael Carrick is among the top contenders to be interim Manchester United head coach until the end of the season. A list of other options being drawn up, but Carrick is currently front runner, and United are expected to make an approach in the coming days. That came from Pete Hall. Then we've had Paul Hurst in the Times saying a similar thing, that Carrick and Van Nistelrooy as well would be available potentially in a caretaker role or on an interim basis, however we're going to word that particular job title. So that's obviously Fletcher. keeping him till the end of the season, depending on how he goes. Potentially Michael Carrick as an interim, although there are counter reports as well suggesting that maybe Carrick wants a more permanent position. Now he's been permanent manager since he left United. Maybe Van Nistelrooy coming back as well. But the leading contender, I would say, at the moment on an interim or a caretaker basis is Ole Gunnar Solskjær. Ole Gunnar Solskjær would be open to a Manchester United return on a caretaker basis until the end of the season. It's not clear if he will feature on the club's shortlist for the role, but he would be interested in potential discussions over a sensational return to his former club. The 52-year-old is currently out of work and has been working as a match analyst for UEFA since he left Besiktas at the start of the campaign when they failed to qualify for the Conference League. So Ole Gunnar Solskjær throwing his name in the ring, and there's been a report coming out at the time of recording this video that there's several ex-Man United pros and players and stuff that are also throwing their self at the club to try and help in some sort of capacity as well. Since then, though, Fabrizio Romano said that Manchester United are aware of Ole Gunnar Solskjær being keen on return on a 6-month contract. United start initial process today to assess short-term options, then new permanent manager from June. That was last night from Fabrizio Romano. Laurie Whitwell has said that Ole Gunnar Solskjær is under consideration to return as the club's caretaker manager until the summer, with Johnny Evans also in contention to return to the coaching staff. So now it's been confirmed that Johnny Evans is back, because Sky is saying he's been in training at Carrington now at the time I'm recording this video as well. So that's the first one saying that actually the club are potentially looking at Ole Gunnar Solskjær as an option as a caretaker manager. And Fabrizio Romano at the time recording has just come out saying Solskjær is ready to take the caretaker role. It's not about the money or contract. He doesn't care. He would love to be back at United to help the club in a difficult moment. The club are deciding internally as well. And I think Romano did say he doesn't care if it comes back for a 6-month role, 12-month role. Ole Gunnar Solskjær is throwing his hat in the ring, potentially coming back as well. Let me know what you think about a return at Ollie Ball under different circumstances as well, with different players. I think better players than the squad that he had at that particular time as well. I wouldn't be against it. They say never go back, but we're in a shit position because, you know, we've been forced to obviously remove the manager probably at a time when we didn't want to. I think they were going to do something because there's been a report from the Times, I think it was, that was saying that they were potentially looking to replace the manager in the summer anyway. I think they had to obviously accelerate that with everything that's kicked off over the last week or last few days regarding it as well. But what do you think about Ollie coming back? Ollie, get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think. Ollie, Fletcher, and Evans till the end of the season. I don't know. You tell me in the comments below what you think. In terms of permanent managers, I'm not going to go through the list. There's absolutely tons of permanent managers. I've heard De Zerbi's name, Maresca, Ancelotti, Thomas Tuchel, like you name them, they've probably been linked to the permanent Manchester United position at this moment in time. We don't even know if we're going to get an interim or a caretaker manager. Glasner's the bookies' favourites, I think, at the moment as well. But yeah, there's just too many to run through, and it's all speculation at this particular moment in time who's they're potentially lining up to be permanent manager. I think the way it's going at the moment is interim or caretaker, and then start the interview process, or maybe look at someone in the summer. But there were reports saying they do want somebody Premier League proven, coming from the Times, saying that and they're putting, you know, Pochettino, Thomas Tuchel, and Ancelotti's name on the list as well. I wouldn't be against, because they've got to get this next one right. So I do think that someone with Premier League experience, and maybe somebody that's got experience at managing a big club as well, would be good. But are those sort of managers going to want to come in and be a head coach at United? That's what the button of the heads was for Thomas Tuchel, because Thomas Tuchel wanted to go down and sign players that he wanted, and the club didn't want to go down that route as well. That's why he eventually turned us down when we were interviewing him for Ten Hag's or to take over from Ten Hag, and that summer where we decided to keep him. But yeah, what a mess. Never a dull moment, is there, with Manchester United at the moment? So in summary, you know, a few briefs have come out from United regarding Ruben Amorim's situation, and the whole blow-up does feel and seem like, you know, there was an agreement when he first came in that he would be open to change. It's come to that time where the club do want him to change, and he said no and refused to, and it's blown up, and, you know, he's ended up losing his job, and we've parted ways. That's how it feels going off of the current reports. That might change, but let me know what you think regarding that in the comments below. But and a bit of injury updates for ahead of tomorrow. Hopefully we can get some news from Darren Fletcher tonight as well. But Ole Gunnar Solskjær seems to be throwing himself in the hat for potentially caretaker role till the end of the season. Get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think regarding that. Be interesting to read those later on. And don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.